Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium, our first of the new year 2025. I want to kick things off with a little housekeeping and thanks to all of you who sent good well wishes for the holiday season, for the new year, for my birthday. I want to thank you all. It means a lot to me. And I also want to announce that my publisher, Adventures Unlimited Press, did get the Rialto in Richmond out. So those of you who pre-ordered that book should be getting your copies soon. I apologize again for all the little typos and mistakes. There were even some added somehow, like political burgers, Burgers. So we have a new type of hamburger being marketed along with the book. But anyway, I want to thank all of you who pre-ordered that. I hope you enjoyed the book. And I have already begun working on the sequel. I've been in contact with Adventures Unlimited. They've said they'll do it. That's going to take some time, but I'm hoping to get it done in time for their inclusion in their fall catalog. I have yet to hear back from Mr. Childress on when the catalog comes out. Don't forget also, tomorrow we do have our first vid chat of 2025. It's already cooking up to be a good one. Don't forget to get your comments and questions submitted no later than 10 o'clock U.S. Central Time tonight. Some of you are sending things from places where you're sending it from the Central Zone, but the timestamp that I receive is going to show up Eastern Time. So don't procrastinate. I go by the timestamp on my end, and if you get hit by that sort of thing, I'm sorry. I have to have some way of cutting things off because we're on that 3-hour time limit. So get your questions and comments submitted no later than 10 o'clock tonight, U.S. Central Time, my time on my end. Also, please don't forget, limit your comments to one submission per member and try to keep things within about 1 page length, 8.5 by 11 page length. Some of you have decided to go ahead and comment on others' comments, and what that does is it makes it difficult for people to follow and for me to print up. So please, no comments on anybody else's comments until after the vid chat. Then you're free to do so. But before the vid chat, please limit your comments to actual submissions and keep them short. We have quite a few newbies with us that have been making some really good comments, and unfortunately they go a bit long. So remember, cut them down. So I want to talk about a new old pattern that is appearing to continue into 2025. This concerns my observations about Japanese diplomacy. You'll recall that back when Shinzo Abe was the Prime Minister of Japan, that I opined that he had set Japan on a new course of diplomacy where Japan was pursuing an increasingly independent diplomacy vis-a-vis Russia and China and India, and more or less independent of the USA. Not independent in the sense that Japan was abandoning the alliance with the USA, but rather a much more assertive and independent role for itself on the world stage. That's continuing, and there's been an interesting development over the holiday break. I had a story submitted to me by member EG that pointed out that Japan has recently tested its space sensor system against hypersonic missiles. Now, as far as I know, the only countries that do have operational hypersonic missiles are Russia, to a lesser extent China, and very, very possibly Japan. And the reason why I say that is that Japan has tested their sensor system against them. That would imply that they either tested their sensors against Russian launches, which have been done in aid of the war in the Ukraine, which would be very difficult for Japan to do, or Japan has launched their own and tested their own hypersonic missile and their space sensor test, which I think probably might be the case. Which is very interesting, because if Japan has done that, that means Japan has taken a lead in a key military technological area over the United States. We have yet to test these things. We've tested a few things, but we have yet to bring them to operational deployability. Now that's the backdrop for this announcement, this short story. And I want to read a few paragraphs from this, because I think this story has to be viewed from the standpoint of what I've been arguing about Japan striking out an independent course in its diplomacy. Here we go. And I'll link all of this for you as usual. The story is titled "Japan Hosts Chinese Military Delegation in a Rare Visit." This was dated just 2 days ago. Quote, Japan said Tuesday that a Chinese military delegation was on a rare exchange visit as the Asian neighbors attempt to thaw frosty ties ahead of Donald Trump's return as U.S. president. Members of the Eastern Theater Command of the Chinese People's Liberation Army were visiting their Japanese counterparts and senior Japanese defense officials from Monday through Friday, Japan's top government spokesman Yoshimasa Hayashi said. The trip was organized after the Japanese and Chinese defense ministers met in November in Laos on the sidelines of a regional defense gathering where they agreed to increase exchanges among the troops, Hayashi said. Quote, for the first time in 5 years, this resumes exchanges among troops, unquote, he said during a regular news briefing. Quote, the promotion of mutual understanding and trust through frank communication at commander's level will contribute to the building of constructive and stable relations between Japan and China. We think that this visit contributes to the peace and stability of the region, unquote, Hayashi said. Now, I want to skip down to one more paragraph in this short article. Quote, Japanese National Security Advisor Takeo Akiba visited China in November and held talks with Wang Yi, and that would be the Chinese defense minister. So that's the article. It's very short, but I think it's huge with significance because, first of all, the article itself strongly suggests that what they are trying to do is establish secure, stable, independent communication channels directly with each other. And as the article points out, this is being done for the purpose of stabilizing the region. In other words, not being in a position where they cannot communicate with each other and touch off a world war or a regional war due to the lack of that ability. In other words, this is the Japanese-Chinese version of the old American-Soviet hotline. That's exactly what this is. And it's a good step if so. But it also means, in my opinion, that Japan is continuing that independent course of geopolitics and diplomacy. And it's positioning itself in a very peculiar way as a mediator or go-between between China and the United States. And again, I think this is also in the long run due to the fact that the Japanese hierarchy, the Japanese deep state, has assessed the United States and its collapsing empire in much the same way that the Russians have, as no longer agreement capable. So this is the reason behind why Japan is rearming. They've got to defend themselves and not rely exclusively or solely on the United States. And number two, while they're doing all this is the reason for the hypersonic sensor test, they're sending military messages to their peer rivals that any technology that you have, we have, and we can duplicate. And we can also come up with countermeasures. So it's crucial and important for these two countries to talk. Now, here's where I suggest something that I've suggested before, and we've seen it already come to pass with that Chinese-Indian military logistical support pact, which in my opinion contains a secret protocol to clear all financial arrangements directly in Indian rupees and Japanese yen and bypass the dollar. And again, the target of that relationship would be China. I suspect that Japan, if it's going to signal its continued development of this geopolitical and diplomatic pattern, that it is again going to reach out to Mr. Putin's Russia, probably after any putative deal between Russia and the Ukraine that might be brokered or arbitrated by the United States and Europe, that Japan will again reach out to Russia and perhaps to the extent even of establishing a similar arrangement with Russia that it's just established with China. This, I think, is the only logical step for Japan, given what it has done already vis-a-vis India and what it's just done with China. So this is a story to watch. We're watching in slow motion, in other words. We're watching a geopolitical realignment of forces and influencers in the Asia-Pacific region. And increasingly, you're noticing that the United States is not so much being locked out of the process as simply being ignored as these nations establish more direct ties and are not reliant on bloc leaders like the old Soviet Union or the current United States. So this is a trend, I think, that will continue. That's it for today's news and views. Don't forget we have our usual afternoon vid chat tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I'll be there early to get things up and running, to make sure that we're up and running. If by chance I should not be there, write it down to the fact that I've had some more internet technical issues. I have not had any recently, but you never know. So, give me time, but if I'm not there by, let's say, 1:30 in the chat room, just take it that I might not be there and we'll have to reschedule. But I'm not anticipating any problems, so we'll see you tomorrow for our first vid chat of 2025. Let's kick off the new year with some interesting discussion, folks. Bye-bye. We'll see you on the flip side, and God bless.